I was struggling a bit with anxiety rather than depression, a lot of ruminating, trouble sleeping, a bit of a lack of self-confidence as well, and I'd realised I wanted to do something about it. I didn't necessarily know what. I tried a bit of CBT, which I didn't find didn't help me massively. But I'd read a bit about hypnotherapy, thought it was interesting, wanted to take a positive step, so got in touch. Much greater appreciation of my wife and my son, I think, especially my son. So I was quite guilty around perhaps when I was playing with him. Was I doing it in a mindful way where I was present, or was I just kind of going through the process of playing with him? I feel like I'm much more aware now that if I'm just doing a process, I'm aware of it and I can do something about it. Whereas previously I was probably just doing a process but not aware of it, so just kept doing a process. So I'd like to think, he's only 4.5, but in his own little way, he would appreciate time with me a bit more. I'm certainly more appreciative of the time I have with him. And that's kind of sacrosanct, and that's really important. And the work we've done has helped me to understand that, and then for me to get more out of that as well. So then it becomes a bit more of a virtuous circle, because if I'm getting something out of it and investing in it, then yeah, it kind of makes you want to do it more and more. And yeah, I guess just a greater appreciation of him and the stage of life he's at, because it's a great stage of life. And I guess there was a danger. I was a bit of a passenger rather than being involved. One of the things I'm guilty of as a person is I always jump to the worst possible conclusion, and I get there really quickly. So a lot of what we've done has been around understanding. I think about 3 or 4 sessions ago, we talked about the number of things that would have to happen to actually get to that nth degree would be pretty astonishing. So in the work environment, what I've found is that I'm a bit more logical about understanding that I know I'm going to that space, but actually one of the things we've talked about is the likelihood of all those things happening and then getting into that place is a pretty slim. And also the other bit for me is around almost like taking a breath. What we've talked about with some of the relaxation stuff is almost don't allow yourself to go down that rabbit hole really quickly, which is what I tended to used to do, whereas I think I'm a bit more measured in the way that I approach it now, and that helps me. So yeah, I don't know whether you call it fatalist or something, but I just don't get there as quickly, and by not getting there as quickly, I've just found that I don't actually get there. What I found really useful with sessions is quite a lot of what you've talked about is pragmatic, as well as kind of the hypnosis stuff. We talk pragmatically. So we did a session a while ago. We talked about my CV, and actually, if you read my CV, I've only really done one thing for 15 years. Well, if I'm ever going to do anything different, I've got to do something different at some point. Otherwise, your CV is a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I guess what we did was for me to understand that, because I'm sort of thinking I might want to do something else, but I was just in this cycle of just doing the same thing again and again. Well, if you just do that, then nothing will ever change. So I think that was one thing. I think the other bit we talked about, which links in, when at the beginning I talked about sort of self-confidence. Part of it for me is around understanding that I have got the self-confidence to be able to do that and make that decision. So a lot of what we talk about is, we've done it today, is we've got the decision. I've got the power to make that decision. So I would suggest that maybe a year ago I wouldn't have applied for the role that I've now got, because I would have gone to that nth degree of, well, I'm never going to get it, so why would I even bother applying? Whereas the work we've done has put me into a space of, well, I will apply and I might get it. And actually, by having that positive intent as a starter for 10 rather than a negative intent as a starter for 10, that's got to end more positively. If you're in that space of I'm going to apply, whereas there's no point, well, it's got to end well. And I've had a couple of interviews since I've worked with you, and obviously not all of them have worked out. But what I found interesting is that didn't close me down. Whereas I think again a year ago I would have taken that very personally, and that probably would have stopped me dead in my tracks. Whereas we've talked about kind of the fact that shouldn't be the case, and also kind of the pragmatic side of it around, there's a job advertised, they want people, you're a good person, why wouldn't you go for that? And it's just a different way of thinking about it, I guess. But yeah, I certainly wouldn't have applied for the role a year ago. No way. Everyone strives for happiness, and ultimately, I guess that's why most people come to see you on a very base level. Where whatever they're dealing with, I guess it's about happiness. So I would like to think that I would be happier. And there's this, the key fundamentals for me are just understanding that choice piece, just being aware that you have a choice in everything you do, but then having the conviction to make those choices and not just be a passenger all the time. So the very fact that we did a session today on kind of whether you use your mobile phone or not, and kind of whether you're addicted and all that sort of stuff, and it's interesting because I have a choice, and that's fine if I want to use it. But I think the bit that's different for me now is I'm more aware of the fact I have the choice, and that's something I don't think I really had previously before we started working together. So ultimately, I would think I'll have a more fulfilling life, and just be aware of life more, and not just sort of be a passenger as it washes along in front of you. And yeah, just be aware of it and involved in it. I think if you're considering it, then in my world you do it, because if you're considering it, you've obviously got an interest, and if you're looking at it positively, it could really help you. If you're not in that space at the moment of thinking positively, because that might be why you want to see a hypnotherapist like yourself, then even if you look at it negatively, the question I would say, well, what's the worst that can happen? Because if the worst that can happen is that nothing much changes, well, at least you tried. Whereas I've found that some stuff has changed, so it was worth it. So even with a fatalistic kind of view, it's still worth doing, in my opinion. If you've shown an interest, there must be something within you that suggests that it might work for you if you've shown an interest.